Today I'm going to talk about something that I've been hearing a lot of folks talk about over the past year or so, which is the concept of black purchasing power. It's a great concept to talk about, but actually I'm going to do it in a three-part series. And all of these pieces are going to be connected. First, today we're going to talk about purchasing power. Then next I'm going to talk about recycling the black dollars and how that occurs and what it means. And then the third, I think you're going to find the most interesting, is an argument that I make that it's better to support build black movements than it is to support black movements, even though both are important. So today let's talk about purchasing power, though. So many of you have heard this statistic, $1.1 trillion. That is a whole lot of money, a whole lot of zeros. The black purchasing power in America is $1.1 trillion. Not billion with a B, not million with an M, trillion with a T dollars. To put that in perspective, if we were our own economy, we would be the 16th largest economy in the world. That is a lot of that's a lot of cash flow that we have flowing through our communities every year to go out and make purchases. And so the logical person asks the question, well, if we have that much in purchasing power, why are we not doing better? Why are so many black people poor? Why do so few of us own our own homes? Why are so many of our communities struggling and have a lack of resource control and power within those communities? And that's a very important question that you asked. In fact, I'm glad you asked it so I can answer it. That's because purchasing power is not economic power. They're two dramatically different things, and you really have to understand the difference between the two to understand why our $1.1 trillion in purchasing power is not being converted into economic power. So, what are the basic principles? You heard me talk about it about gentrification. The only way you can stop gentrification is through ownership. The only way you convert purchasing power to economic power is through ownership. It's inescapable. You're going to hear me say it, and others say it. Dr. Claude Anderson, others say it time and time again. If you don't own, you don't control. And if you don't control, other people can control you. And so to convert purchasing power to economic power requires ownership. So let's make a few quick points. So this number came out through a Nielsen report. Nielsen does consumer surveys across the nation to kind of determine where marketers should go and whatever. And so one of the things that they also said, in addition to the $1.1 trillion of purchasing power, is that blacks are the highest consumption group in the nation. Meaning that out of every other ethnic group in the nation, we're more likely to go out and spend money on things as opposed to save or invest. So we're going out spending money. And most of the money that we spend is what we call non-appreciable assets, things that don't grow in value. So for example, did you know when you buy a new car, as soon as you take it off a lot, it loses 25% of its value? So if you buy a new car today at $10,000, as soon as you get those keys and you drive off the lot, it's only worth $7,500. So you lost money right there. So you can't turn around and sell it for what you bought it for. A home, for example, though, is different. Most homes over time, depending on where they're at, grow in value, where they do what we call appreciate. So if you buy a $100,000 home today, you hold it for 30 years, pay off your mortgage, and then you want to sell it, odds are over 30 years that sucker is going to go from $100,000 to $150,000 to $200,000. So you've actually gained money on it. As black folks, we tend to spend money on things that don't give us any return on investment or don't grow in value. So we don't purchase a lot of homes, we don't purchase a lot of stocks, and we definitely don't start businesses at the same rate. So when they talk about this, most of this is going into buying things like food, clothing, shoes, hair care, all of these other things that really they're good to have and they're good to use, but they don't really go in any value. So we have purchasing power, we don't have economic power because we're not creating ownership and we're not owning things that increase in value. The second thing is this concept of business ownership and business production capacity. So right now, the average business, for every 4 white businesses, 3 to 4 white businesses, we start 1 black business. For every black business that makes $100,000, we make less than $30,000. So we're 1/3 or 3 times to 4 times behind in every business category. Not only that, the businesses that we do start are overwhelmingly what we call service-based businesses, things like daycare, janitorial services, some financial services, some low-cost healthcare services, daycare providers, etc. We have tons of businesses in that category, but we don't have businesses in these other industries: finance, wholesale, larger scale retail. We do a little bit of good stuff in small retail. We don't do manufacturing. So what we call the whole supply chain of businesses, we're overwhelmingly weighted into these low cost of entry service businesses. So even when we want to go out and purchase from black folks to help build black businesses, because black businesses are black owned businesses, and that's ownership and that's ultimately power, it's very hard to find in many instances the level of businesses that we can support to fulfill all of our consumption requirements, all the things we want to spend money on. That's why I'm going to talk about, is it better to buy black or build black, in the next two videos. So one final note about this in regard to savings. Black Americans have the lowest savings rate in the nation, meaning we're not putting away dollars in the savings to be used for our future needs. And so when you add all of that up, the reason why we're not seeing more benefit from $1.1 trillion in purchasing power, we're not seeing purchasing power being converted into economic power, is because we're not owning the things that matter the most. We're not owning our homes. We have a 30% lower home ownership rate than whites. We're not owning our businesses. We start businesses at 1/3 the size and 1/3 the sales. And therefore, we have no ownership. Therefore, we have no economic power. And if you don't have any power, and economic power in particular, then again, like we talked about on the last video, gentrification. Folks can come into your community that have more economic power, buy up the assets, move you out, do what they want to do with you, and leave you on the outside looking in, asking yourself, what happened to this community that we used to call a black community? So that's all I got for you today. The next video we're going to talk about is the recycling of dollars. And just as a teaser to that video, they say that the average black dollar leaves the black community after only 1 minute versus 21 days in the average white community. So we'll talk about that in the next video, but until then, remember, I love you. Keep working hard.